Hey, this is Jeremy Fisher, and you're listening to Tobin Tonight.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you doing, Tobin?
I'm doing okay. I found out that we have a little something in common.
Okay, what's that?
We both have a little bit of Newfoundland in us.
Oh yeah, right on.
I was going to start the interview off by asking what are you at, but I don't know if that would register right away. So let's talk a little bit about this Newfoundland connection we have. Your mother was born and raised in Newfoundland?
That's right, yeah, she was born in St. John's and spent a bit of time there in her childhood, and then they moved to Corner Brook.
Now, have you ever spent any time in Newfoundland when you were younger, or were you always, as I call it, a mainlander?
Always a mainlander, other than summers when we go and visit my grandmother and my aunt.
I've seen here that are you based in Ottawa or Toronto?
I'm in Ottawa.
Oh.
Yeah, I've been here for the last 8 years or so.
Whereabouts in Ottawa?
I'm in Centertown.
Oh, Centertown. Okay, so like in my mind when I'm thinking Centertown, I think like close enough to Carleton for university students, but not like in the realm of Carleton.
That's right. Yeah, we have some students on our street. Our street's a mix of families and rental units, so we always have a bunch of students, and we are fairly close to Carleton. That's where I go and play squash.
This is weird. How have we not crossed paths? Because I'm a Carleton alumni, and I would go there to play like soccer and ball hockey. I feel like we probably crossed paths, and you like ran me over one time, and I was like, you know what? Never again. No.
Maybe on my bicycle, I'd run over your toe. That's about as bad as I get.
Just coming out of squash and being like, can you believe this guy? And it's like, yeah, I can actually, because you were being a little bit of a butt. And I'd be like, oh, that's fair. So I want to talk a little bit about now, of course, you do this Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern, a live stream, Jeremy Fisher Jr. Who came up with this idea? And was it sparked originally just by COVID, or was it something that's always in the back burner?
Well, it was can be traced back to the National Arts Center, because in the early days of this lockdown, they said that they were going to they partnered with Facebook and the Slate family, and they decided to start sponsoring live streams under the hashtag Canada Performs. So they said, just send us an email when you're doing a live stream, and so I did. I said, I'm going to do one this Saturday, and I'm going to play songs for families. And so they picked me up, and they sponsored it, and they promoted it, and I did it. And I thought I could do one of these every Saturday morning. I mean, those first couple weeks felt like a couple months, you know, I think for all of us. And I just needed a way to know what a week was. You know what I'm saying? And this was the thing for me. It just sort of chose me in a way. I started focusing on it and made sure that I could get one together for every week.
I guess the idea here when you're doing these performances, you know, you're telling stories to kids, you're singing songs to kids, I guess in hopes of sparking a bit of creativity, togetherness, and happiness, correct?
Yeah, just finding a little bit of joy and also interactivity. You know, it's really important. This has kind of swept in to replace live shows for musicians and audiences, but it's not really a live show, and it's not really a TV show. It's this other thing that we're kind of figuring out. So that's a huge part of it for me. I think that's what I was surprised after doing the first one is how interactive it was and how much I could engage the kids at home.
Yeah, it's like, because I see here, like, the parents and kids can interact with you, like, and join in like, real time, which is kind of interesting in itself. And, like, when you're mentioning about the new norm, you know, the first days of COVID or the first few weeks, I've seen acts like Luke Combs, Tim McGraw, Garth Brooks, any artist really just jump on Instagram and say, okay, this is lasting a little bit longer than what we thought, so we're going to start doing concerts from our, like, basement. And at first I thought, like, okay, you know, they're doing their task, I guess, in some essence of giving something to the fans. But I think it was even a shock to them when you see some of their comments that the fans that join in real time and give you, like, for example, I think someone came across like a Rascal Flatts video and said they went to their first concert and their last concert was Rascal Flatts and they always wanted to meet them, blah, blah, blah. And when one of the Rascal Flatts members seen it, like in live time, they responded to it. I'm like, you wouldn't get that at a concert. And if you got it at a meet and greet, you're paying like $2,000 just to say it to their face. So it's cool. And then even when you see their reaction, you're like, oh wow, like you get to see everyone's reaction to it. So I thought that's cool. But interesting that you allow like the parents and kids to interact with you as well. And I guess that kind of gives you a new burst of energy when you actually see parents and kids interacting, having a little bit of fun too.
Oh, it does. It totally does. There was actually one week we had some technical issues and the feed of comments wasn't coming through on my laptop. And I felt totally alienated, and I got my friend to read the comments, and I said, hey, if kids are trying to tell me something, can you text them to me? So she was texting the comments to, my messenger, and so I was able to get back in there. It was a pretty long delay, for her to like kind of transcribe them and stuff, but it made me realize how important that part of it is. I can't just ignore that. It's become a big part of the show.
When you're doing this kind of stuff, like children's entertainment, you want everyone involved. Otherwise, with kids, if they're on a phone or a tablet or whatnot, like a parent is in the room with them, so they kind of have to approve it. But if you're just performing and you're like, okay, like I need some kid interaction here, I'm not getting anything, it's kind of like you're stranded you're like pretty much up the water without a paddle there.
Well, yeah, and it's magical for the kids. I mean, what shows or like entertainers did you watch as a kid? What's your generation of?
That's what I like that you. I like that you're asking me questions here. Like I'm supposed to be the host here, but I'm
turning the tables.
I grew up pretty much on like Sharon, Lois, and Bram, and if you ask my brothers, they want to beat me up every day because that was on repeat.
Are you the youngest?
I am the youngest, so you can imagine,
right.
like, it's 10, I think it's like 10, 12, about maybe 15 years between us all, so, like, can you imagine, like, you're in kindergarten, your other brother's in, like, high school, one's at MUN.
Well, there you go. So, I mean, imagine Sharon, Lois, and Bram looking at the TV and saying, hi, Tobin, you want to hear the Elephant Song, or you want to hear Skinamarink, and knowing that they're actually talking to you, like that's something from our childhood that there was no technology to allow that. And I think it's an amazing thing, for kids. I get feedback from parents that their kid was just like beside themselves when I'm able to incorporate, like I have this one song called Down at the Library, and I talk about things I like to read about down at the library, and then after I do a verse, I take suggestions from the kids at home, so they give me a thing they like to read about it, and then I rhyme it live into the song. So in a way, they actually even get to, kind of create with me, and it's exciting and it's new and it's, I think it's a lot of fun.
It sounds like it's like the kids Eminem there. It's just like, just live versing there.
That's right, yeah. It is a little bit like that. Sometimes it gets dangerously close to Eminem racy lyrics.
We've had Splash and Boots on in the past, and they've even said that they miss the hugs, of course, with coming, with the live stream aspect, but you do see a little bit of bloopers from those two down in their, I guess, basement or their setup, and giving kids shout outs, birthday wishes, and all that. And I'm like, oh wow, the kid must like really enjoy this stuff, because when you see them on TV, they don't actually get to do that kind of aspect.
Yeah, totally.
Now, you can find, of course, the music sheets for what you do and the activities on your website. I'm guessing this is if they missed the live stream or want to do it at home after. Like, just say if the kids are really, really loving this song or really love the activity, it's not like a one-shot thing. They can basically download it at home.
Totally, yeah. It stays up there on Facebook. We also, after the fact, post it to YouTube, and you can find all of it at jeremyfisherjr.com.
Now, in some of these, I've heard that before you get going with a different song or story, you like to kind of rev it up a bit in the different instrument that you're going to present. How many instruments do you actually play?
That's a good question that I've been wondering to myself, because I'm thinking, I started doing this wondering, thinking like, this might be a month or two, and sure, I've got at least 8 instruments that I can play and make a sound with. Now, I don't know how many weeks we've been doing, but I'm sitting here in my studio, and I can count. I got a guitar, a bass, a banjo, a piano, a drum machine, a theremin, a synthesizer, a mandocello, a drum kit, a cello, harmonicas, drumsticks, ukuleles, mandolins. That's all I can see right now. Omnichord. Yeah, I got a lot of stuff.
You got to mix in the accordion. Yeah. You got to get the accordion there.
I got one of those too. That was I think my first or second surprise instrument. Was accordion.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, wow. See, that's the Newfoundland thing coming in.
Oh, it totally is. You know what?
Yeah.
That was my grandfather's instrument. My grandfather, from Newfoundland, Walter Chambers, had the Walter Chambers Orchestra. He toured all over the island with playing accordion and piano.
If someone just tossed you an accordion, it's almost like, and I can't really say this because now and then I'll be the anti-Newfoundlander when I say it, but it's like, if someone's like, you want to know if he's a Newfie? Hand him an accordion. And then it's like, he's had lessons, I know he has. It's like, no, man, he hasn't. And then they hand me one, they're like, this guy's not a Newfoundlander. I'd be like, but I have everything. I have the accent. I love Lime Crush. I love Pineapple Crush. They're like, but you can't play this instrument. I'd be like, oh, that's the criteria? But no, that's awesome. I think I've counted like 10 or 11 there. And it's, I don't know, where did you learn to play all this? Were you like one of those kids that got picked on at school and was like, you know what, guys, I'm going to form my own band?
I like time to myself. I was never very good at sports, and so when I found music, when I found electric guitar specifically, I think it came quickly to me because I loved it so much, and it was a way I could express myself that I'd never found in other ways before, and so I just suited me well. I spent a lot of time sitting around playing guitar, and then that sort of blossomed into an interest in just playing whatever I could get my hands on, and eventually accordion.
That's cool. I always like people who have like different backgrounds in instruments because, I mean, some of the people that you can see out there that do really well with guitar or do really well with piano, like when you see that they do very well with a lot of different instruments, you're like, you're crazy. Like, how did this talent come? And I'm sure your squash players will agree that you're not a great person at sports. No, I'm not kidding. they're like that.
I usually lose. I have one squash partner. I usually lose. So that's
So sometimes he calls in sick. He's like, "Sorry, Jeremy, I've come down with something today." You're like, "I've just seen you. You're outside my house
with another squash partner."
You're with another. Yeah, exactly. Just out of pure interest, I guess, is when you look at Splash and Boots, they came up with the yellow and blue concept. I believe it was because of, I think it's Taze, which is boots. I think it was her mother or grandmother had like these old cloths sticking around. The Wiggles, of course, you get their colors pretty much from, your blue, red, yellow, purple, what have you. So my question here is, who decided on this trademark white and red baseball t-shirt?
Well, it started out, I always wore a stripe, like a blue and red striped shirt at my Jeremy Fisher Jr. shows. And then over the last little while, I thought it might be fun to put something on the shirt. So we've been experimenting. I haven't got it finalized yet, which is why you just see the white and the red. But I've been experimenting with a design to put on the shirt. So that should be coming in the future. And I guess it sort of subtly speaks of Canada and being Canadian. It's also just a really eye-catching color, and I just like the shirt. I don't know what else to say. I just like the shirt.
It's like something that you definitely plan months ahead. Everyone's like, okay, so we've got all the instruments planned. We've got and you're like, no. Before we go anywhere, I want to figure out my shirt.
Yeah, you know what though? Like the way you've set that up makes me realize that I need to fabricate some story about my grandma's basement or something. Yeah. So I need to inject some meaning into this.
Oh no! I just love the idea because you know what? It's pretty much the way I look at it, and this is coming from personal experience. When I was first doing the podcast, I came up with just putting TT on a remote and putting it out there, and I'm like, that sounds okay. I got someone to draw me a picture, and I was like, that's cool. And then it came over time that I'm like, you know what? I like the cartoon idea. I like having this picture aspect. And it's always kind of cool to see where the original aspect of things come from. So when you're just saying like it's a red and white t-shirt there, like I call it the baseball tee, it's just cool because, yeah, it does represent Canada, but it has a story within itself. Like you just said, it's like, you just thought it was a simplistic shirt. It was just something that you thought was cool. And it kind of ties into the idea of what you're doing in itself. It's like a simplistic thing to get, kids' entertainment, just you singing and telling stories. There's your story, Jeremy. I just fed it to you.
Awesome. Well, I should say also that it does, the other thing it comes from is, so my first record is called Highway to Spell, which is obviously a riff on AC/DC's Highway to Hell. I love those classic concert tees from the 80s that were the baseball tees. Usually they were a black shirt with white sleeves or a white shirt with black sleeves, usually a black shirt. I have a Twisted Sister one and a Quiet Riot one, and I used to have a Boston one that was the red one. I don't know what happened to that. So it is a bit of a throwback to, the thing that got me into music, which was AC/DC and those 80s rock concert tees.
Well, there you go. There's another aspect to your answer. I like that you didn't go too extreme with going oh, I loved Hell's Bells and now I sing that to kids, but instead of going with Hell Bells, I just put in Janelle's Bells. And then there's some kids just are I love Janelle's Bells. Do you think in time, if you trademarked it, you'd go with a blue and white one, a green and white one, just different colors?
You never know. I mean, could be the next album cycle requires a new color. I don't know.
I think that would be a cool aspect. Especially if you have your own logo on the front, and the only thing that really changes is the sleeves. Because kids are picky. Let's be honest. And some kid might be I'm not into red, but that's a Jeremy Fisher blue one. Yeah, I've got to wear that. And then some kid will be or their parent be there's no difference. It's just the sleeves. And they're you don't know.
You're hired, Tobin, as the head of my merchandising team.
Oh man, I'd love to do it. I mean, I'm still on Rick Campanelli's butt to get on those bobblehead ideas that I had 2 years ago. When you were starting up with just doing instruments as well, you've toured with Newfoundlanders here as well, Rex Gowdy, Great Big Sea. Do they have a bit of an influence, I guess, on your performance as well? Again, coming back to the whole Newfoundland tie-in.
Yeah, I spent quite a bit of time on the road with Great Big Sea, and those guys are still good buddies of mine. Sean McCann actually lives here in Ottawa, and we, when we were allowed to hang out, we hung out all the time. Our families hang out together, and I've written songs with them, and they definitely had an influence on me as a performer and took me into some pretty big rooms where I got to open for, Rex Gowdy. We did Mile 1 at the start of his Outports tour together. Yeah, some of the biggest rooms I've ever played to, I've done with Newfoundlanders. The thing that I will say that was true of all the Newfoundlanders I ever toured with is they were the last ones to go to bed. And even after the show, it would be 5:30 in the morning, and we'd be up singing shanties around the kitchen table or, the table in the tour bus or whatever. And it's a way of life there, I think, in a way that it's changed on the mainland. And I love that Newfoundlanders keep that tradition alive. I mean, there are people that you'll meet who, don't play music professionally, but they sure could. I mean, they're good enough to, and they know all the songs, and they'll be up there at 5:30 in the morning jamming with you.
What have you been doing? Of course, I know you mentioned about doing this Jeremy Fisher Jr. live stream for kids, but besides that, what have you been doing to kind of keep yourself sane? Because I know you have kids of your own.
I do. I've got a 4-year-old and a 3-month-old at home here, and so yeah, if you do the math on that, our youngest daughter was a month old when we shut her down. And what I do to stay sane is I take a lot of deep breaths and I try to be patient. I've never been so busy in all my life. In fact, I wasn't sure if I was going to make it out here to start this interview on time because one of the kids was fussy in there. It's hard to be the only friend and parent to 4-year-old. My wife is with the baby most of the day, and to try to keep her entertained, but also keep her in line. And it's really hard to be anybody's everything. And the thing that I can say that I try to do every day is just appreciate that this is time that I get to spend with my family that I wouldn't have otherwise. And that's precious. And having a second kid come along now, you're even more aware of it the second time, that all these little phases of childhood are brief and they change frequently. So I think it's a simple thing, but just reflecting on that each day and remembering to breathe and remembering to find the joy in all the moments that I can, and know that one day I'm going to look back on this time really fondly and be really thankful that I had all this time with my kids.
That is a excellent answer, and I think you have that written down on a piece of paper. No, I'm only kidding. It'd be...
Well, I got it recorded now. I'm going to ask you to send it to me so I could transcribe it.
Yeah, exactly. Like when they get older, just be like, listen, I was very sincere when I said this. I didn't have it written down. You can even ask Tobin. Tobin has it in a recording here. I guess to close it out, Jeremy, would you like to play a game called How Canadian?
Oh, I'd love to.
It's basically an idea of trying to top something that would only happen in Canada. So we played this with Sarah Nurse, we played it with Splash and Boots, and I love Splash and Boots as examples, so I'll toss theirs. Splash, or Nick, was almost late for his interview. He said, I was almost so late to this interview because my polar bear never arrived on time. Hashtag How Canadian. So that's basically the concept. It's something that you'd only happen in Canada. The one that, it was funny because Carlton Stone and Coleman Hellboat used this example of you open a door for someone and you apologize because you opened it like too early where they're still a good distance away, and that's How Canadian. So what would be something that you would think only happens in Canada that would sound like a How Canadian?
Oh yeah, well it's sort of along those lines. I used to tour a lot all over the world and a lot in America. I would notice this is when I was living out in Vancouver, I can remember one time going to the grocery store to stock up. I had been away on a U.S. tour for like 6 weeks, and I'm there in the grocery store, and I'm just not looking, and I open one of those freezer doors, to like get some frozen fruit and stuff, and I just wasn't looking, and I slammed it right into this woman, like, fairly hard, and she apologized to me for standing in the way of my freezer door that I bonked her in the head with, and I thought, in America, this would have, I used to just watch myself because it can be very confrontational. I mean, you see a lot of, like, no trespassing signs, and that the laws and the right to protect themselves is different down there, and then, of course, in Canada, you can run right into somebody and they're going to apologize for getting in your way.
I love that story. That just reminds me of like the I don't know if you ever heard of or watched How I Met Your Mother, but it's like when Marshall's character brings Robin to like the hoser hut, and he bangs into someone on purpose, and the guy turns around and goes, "Oh, sorry, I didn't see you there. Would you like a donut?" And then he's like, "So I bang into him, and he apologized to me and gives me a donut." And I was just like, that's Canadian for you. It's like at soccer, someone can like steamroll you and then offer to pick you up and be like, "Sorry, I did that, bud." It's like, "You okay?" I'm just like, yeah, if this was anywhere else, they'd be like, "Yeah, in your face." It's like, I just steamrolled you, and you accidentally rub someone in soccer or score on the goalie, but it was like a pretty, could have hit off his face, but you still score. But instead of celebrating, you're like, "Oh, crap, like, you okay, dude?" And he's like, "Why aren't you off celebrating?" It's like, "Because you're hurt." It's like,
that's why I think all dogs are Canadian. Have you ever noticed that? You step on a dog's tail and it jumps up, and then it comes up to you with its ears back and its tail between its legs as though like it did something to you.
Well, my dog here is like, we have the joke here in our house is if anyone sneezes, the dog literally comes over to your face and like licks it all over and then expects you to rub his belly. It's like, "Oh, I'm sorry I wasn't there right away when you sneezed, but I'm here now, so can you reward me with a belly rub?" And I'm like, why are you getting the treatment? I'm the one who sneezed. So Jeremy, of course, you do this live every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern, which would be like 12:30 here in Newfoundland. What's your whole end goal for this once COVID's over, or what do you want to continue to do and hope to get out of this?
I don't have an end goal. This is really one of those things. It's about the journey. I'm doing these Saturday morning specials. I'm going to do them for a few more weeks. I'm going to take some time off in the summer. And I think that we're going to be at this for a little while, at least on the live performance front. And this is my way of performing live. So in the time I'm taking off, I'm going to do a little bit of, do a paint job on the studio and up the production a little bit more and just try and turn it into, something that's even more exciting and more engaging for kids. So watch the next few Saturday morning specials until, sort of the end of June, and then look back in September and we'll be coming back with something that's hopefully even more exciting.
Now, Jeremy, are you going to be amazed to watch me clue up everything you just said in this interview into something that is going to be so relatable to you, and your mind's going to be blown? You just mentioned about the journey. And we mentioned earlier about how you had t-shirts coming from bands like Journey. So you know what I'm going to say? Don't stop believing.
Oh, man.
Hold on to that feeling.
I won't. Thank you.
That's going to do it for this episode of Tobin Tonight. Our thanks to Jeremy Fisher for coming on the show. Remember, you can find past, present, and future episodes on TobinTonight.com, Spotify, and iTunes. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and leave a comment or two. For Tobin and myself, this is Jacob saying, thanks for listening and good night.